I gotta say, that car is groovy, baby. It's the 60s.
Yeah,
So you going for a drive?
I think so. I'm gonna have to close up the trailer first and let this car warm up a little.
Well, Eric, just like any hard-working man in the 60s, it smokes too much.
Not kick the idle down.
He did say it was stuck on.
I was hoping it would do it.
Well, let me just step back here and get everybody caught up when Eric looks for the hood release. Because what we have here, as it attempts to smoke me out, is a 1964 Ford Thunderbird. This car was parked in 1977. The original owner parked this car. Actually, it was the original owner's daughter, at the owner's bequest, parked the car in the family garage in 1977. And through a friend of a friend, the current owner, our new customer, acquired the car in 2017. It's been sitting for 40 years.
Where did he say the first release on the hood was? I can see the second one.
I'll have to look it up.
Oh, all right. I suppose I could just take it for a drive, but maybe I don't need to.
I think I've got a good idea here on video just what the problem is.
Yeah.
The owner was not exaggerating when he said this car smokes a bit much.
Yeah, that would be embarrassing to drive for sure.
Because it's a beautiful looking car.
Yeah.
And he absolutely loves this car. He's made it his labor of love. He wants to drive it every day this summer. But he's on his way to sunny Florida because it's freezing cold here in Michigan right now. And he's left it in our care. And what do you think this car is going to need right off the bat?
Valve seals, and something's up with the carb too. That's why I was trying to pop the hood. I was trying to see if I can get the idle to come down a little bit. It's revving so high just idling here, I don't even want to put it in gear.
We'll go ahead and give Eric a chance to look under the hood and see what he can find.
If I let it run too long, that smoke's gonna start stinking up the interior.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and bring the car inside.
Not in condition. Smokes too much.
I'm gonna turn on the exhaust fan.
Be my guest. Holy cow. I've heard cars smoke before, but wow.
Yeah, that's one of the worst ones I've ever seen.
And it's a beautiful car.
Yep.
No wonder the owner is so determined to have you do a top-end engine rebuild if necessary.
His love for this car definitely shows through.
Because it is a lovely car. And perhaps a few more eagle-eyed viewers will recognize it as the CIA Felix Leiter car from Goldfinger, the James Bond classic from 1964.
Uh-huh.
So what's under the hood?
I believe he said it was a 390, right?
So the owners explained to us that the hood is slightly out of alignment, and as a result, need to put some sort of a piece of material in there to keep it from scraping or chipping any more paint off that seam right there. O'Reilly's to the rescue. Well, it's a good-looking power plant. So this would be the Ford 390. Has it got a 4-barrel?
Oh, yeah, it is a 4. Yep, Holly.
Holly 4-barrel.
He said the power steering pump leaks as well. It did leave a couple little piddles outside. New hoses. That's not difficult. It looks like that it comes off pretty easy. Did he answer yet if he's got a service manual for this?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We're waiting for the email. But I believe he said that the power steering reservoir had a crack or a bad seam or something that was causing a leak. He didn't think the pump itself was bad.
No. From what he said, it sounded like the O-rings between the reservoir and the pump underneath it were not sealing for some reason.
Gotcha. That's where the power steering supply line comes from?
No, I think it's just literally the reservoir sitting on top of the pump, how it seals to the pump itself.
Gotcha. Well, I think he said we can look at that too if necessary.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure we're going to get to know this Thunderbird very well over the next few months.
Yeah.
While our customer is enjoying sunny FLA. And it's a beauty. In this beautiful aquamarine seafoam color, which the owner hand painted himself. It is the original color, but he did all the body work and repainted it.
I like the fuzzy dice. That's one of my favorite touches. When I was a kid, my first 3 or 4 cars, I put fuzzy dice in all of them.
And you know what? I'm not a big fuzzy dice fan, but in this 64 Thunderbird, it works. Hopefully by then, it'll be running nice and clean and smooth and without all that heavy 60s style smoking. This car's probably up to what, 3-4 packs a day?
Okay. Yeah, we better keep an eye on the oil so we don't run it low how much it's smoking.
Well, as the song says, bird is the word. We'll see what comes first on this 1964 Ford Thunderbird. Well, the bird is up and flying.
Yeah, we've had this car for, I don't know, a month maybe? And other things have been, were in line before it, and so we finally were able to get up in the air and have a peek underneath it and hopefully get started working on it soon. It's getting a lot of work done to it, a big job.
Well, let's take a look. How does she look underneath?
Pretty nice, I think.
Just to get everybody caught up again, this is the 64 Ford Thunderbird.
Yeah, I had not realized, apparently this is a unibody car, because all you see is floor pans and a little bit of structure there. But it looks pretty good. It's not crusty, rusty at all. I'm not sure what else to say. It looks like it's got a 390 in it.
Yeah, we know it's a 390 car, and we know the owner has done a lot of work. He has a video channel of his own.
Yeah.
And we were catching ourselves up on some of the activities he's been up to since he bought this car, which was an unrestored Survivor.
Mm-hmm. I think it was local to Michigan too, I think.
I believe so. And it's been around that original owner's family for a very long time. And when he bought it, definitely needed some work, but it was all there.
Mm-hmm.
From what we can tell, pretty solid under here.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. If you watch his channel, you can tell the car did have some rust that he had to repair, but nothing too horrible. He painted it. Looks like it's the original color, or maybe at least as close as he could come, because the images he's got on his YouTube channel, it looks pretty much like this. Just, the paint wasn't as nice as this.
And how's it look here on the backside?
Pretty good, I think. It looks like it's got maybe not new exhaust, but at least new mufflers. Did we talk to him about putting tailpipes on this or anything?
Not that I recall.
Okay, it looks like it needs, a downpipe there, and it's got dual exhaust, so it's got the same thing going on the other side. It looks like someone has put new fuel and brake lines on it. Someone put a new sending unit in the gas tank. New brake hoses, there's a hose on up there.
Now, you did mention before you are a little concerned about the status of the fuel tank.
Well, it doesn't look like it has come down. The straps, you can tell there's from the rust on that stud, it looks like the tank hasn't come out in a long, long time. Gaskets, it very acidic as it sits and sits and sits, and then it rusts things.
This car is due for a major overhaul.
Yeah, we're gonna be pulling the engine out of this car. When this car runs, it smokes very, very badly. It burns oil. Valve seals are toast. I'm a teensy bit afraid that it might be rings. I really don't think it is. I think it's the seals. He said, don't do the rings, I can't afford it. And it's almost certainly just the seals too, anyway, so.
Of course, we won't know till you get in there.
Well, yeah.
And you're pointing out that this Ford-O-Matic transmission looked very familiar to you.
I'm not, I gotta look. I don't know exactly. I don't need to do anything with the trans in this car, so I didn't do any research on it. But it looks very similar to the trans that's in my Checker. The trans that's in my Checker is a Borg-Warner trans that, if I remember correctly, was made from the Ford-O-Matic 64. My Checker is a 65 or a 66, depending on who you ask. when I get parts for it, I have to get parts for a 65, but it's titled as a 66.
Well, there's plenty of 60s goodness here with this bird. These were very popular cars for the time. Personal luxury, family cars. This car could do it all. Thunderbird is quite a namesake for the Ford Motor Company, and this is one of their most popular iterations I think that they ever made, the 64 model.
Yeah, it's a very handsome car.
It is. So what's the plan for getting the engine out?
Drain the coolant, start unhooking stuff, start unbolting stuff. Luckily the exhaust isn't that rusty. I shot some Croil on the nuts there yesterday and let it sit for a little bit. And I would like to leave the transmission in the car. It's just easier to get the engine out if you leave the trans in. So I'm gonna have to come up with a way to kind of help hold it there. There's a pretty beefy brace across from side to side here that's not touching the transmission, but the trans is just over it. So maybe I can kind of wedge a piece of wood in here or something, and that will hold it up on the bell housing while the engine's out. I'll come up with something. Doesn't scare me.
Well, fantastic. Well, I can't wait to get started. I know the owner is anxious to hear a progress report from us.
And I'm anxious to show him some progress. And he wants to drive this car this summer. And I don't think he's had the opportunity to enjoy it much because of the smoke. It really smokes very, very badly. And we're doing some other stuff with it too. I know I could probably do the valve seals with the engine in the car, but he's also got a freeze plug right over this motor mount. Matter of fact, if I shine my light on it, you can see it. You see all that rust there? It leaks coolant from there pretty badly. So we're gonna pull the engine out and replace all the freeze plugs. That's just the best way to do it. If I'm gonna do the freeze plugs, I might as well pull the engine out, and that's gonna be the easiest way to handle pulling the engine apart, pulling the heads off, replacing the valve seals. While I'm at it, I'll lap the valves and all that good stuff too.
Great. Well, I'll let you get started, and the sooner we have it on the engine stand, the better. I can hear that Thunderbird relieving itself.
Yeah, it makes me have to pee.
First things first, draining that coolant. But underneath here, I know the owner has done quite a lot of work to this car.
Yeah, he cleaned it up in here. I'm sure this engine compartment could not have been this clean the last time this car drove.
Well, one of the videos we watched where he first started working on it, there was a nest in here.
Yeah,
Critters and
at the back of the engine, I think it was.
Yeah, right back there. You know, this car was a bit of a barn find. And some animals had gotten to it, and of course he had done this very highly detailed paint job.
Kind of interesting. I wonder, that almost looks like a conversion to convert a single circuit braking system into a dual circuit or something. I don't know.
Now, we did notice that this car was leaking what I assume was transmission fluid. It looked like transmission fluid, but
Yep.
you reminded me that most cars of this era, their powering steering systems work off of transmission fluid.
Yep. And I'm sure, yeah. See, it says right on the dipstick, auto trans fluid. And my checker uses auto trans fluid, and all the Mopars I've worked on older than, I don't know, 73 or so, maybe a little bit newer than that, I don't remember for sure. They all took trans fluid for the power steering, so.
There's definitely a leak. Do we know where it's coming from?
Leak? Oh, the trans leak? He said it was coming from the reservoir when he bolted the reservoir on. So, I mean, I assume, and that's where it looks like it's coming from too. The top of the pump is all wet. This low pressure power steering hose has a nick in it too. It's not wet around the nick, but it is nicked. That's really interesting. Why does the power steering fluid go up there? Right there. Follow this low pressure hose all the way back, goes to the bulkhead. What's up with that? Are the wipers hydraulic or something? I wonder if they are. Once again, I will have to look in the service manual. This is the sort of stuff that really fascinates me about old cars, is the slow advancement of technology.
And the diversity of which engineers try to come up with solutions at these different car companies, try to find the best way to do it that was reliable, the most functional, and of course, the bosses wanted the most cost-effective. But no one really had a definitive universal solution for everything at this time.
No, I mean, there was a lot of conventions, especially among the American cars. Things don't start to get funny until you look at a lot of the European cars. But, you know, every once in a while you see something odd like that in an American car.
Well, let's see what other odd things we can come up with the 64 Thunderbird. Well, that was a close call.
Yeah, well, we dodged a hell of a bullet, thank God. We were unbolting the hood off of this Thunderbird to get ready to pull the engine off. And I figured, let's start basically by pulling the hood off, because then I got more light and I'm not working around the hood to get anything else off. So we unbolted the hood. I loosened up those 2 bolts over there, just a few turns, just so you could get them with your fingers. And I came over here, remember the hood's still on, and I loosened up this bolt just a couple of turns, 2 or 3 turns, and it came all the way out. I hate to admit, it did bend the top of this hinge a little bit.
And the whole hood started to come down on you.
Yes, it did.
And now you know why.
Right, and thank God, I've done stuff like this before, so I put my fender covers right here. My expectation was that once these bolts were loose, that the hood was going to slide that way.
Right.
And that's why I put the fender covers here
Onto the cowl
to
there.
protect that area. That's what I was mostly concerned with.
And that is what started happening, but not in the way you expected.
Right, and well, when this came out, after I only loosened it 2 or 3 turns, the hood came down this way.
Right.
So, and then that hinge, it literally just pushed the hinge down.
Yes.
There's not much to these hinges. I think I can push it down. See that? That's some of the weakest hinges I've actually ever seen. I can't believe
Just your dead weight alone is
Yeah.
enough to compress it.
usually you can't move them that easily.
Right. They're such large springs.
But anyway, after a little bit of panic, we took the hood off, put it over there, put it under a cover so it's in a low traffic area, so hopefully nothing should happen to it while I'm working.
We put cardboard down, we put weights down, we protected the edge that's on the floor.
But I had to look at the bolts to figure out what was going on. And I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera. 3 of the bolts are fine thread, 1 is coarse. Guess which one came out with just 2 turns?
The one that you took out first.
Yeah, so that's something I'm gonna try to deal with for the customer. I mean, look at the tops of these bolts. Here's the one that doesn't match. Here's one like the rest. There, it's a dead ringer. It's the same hex. It's like the same washer. Who would have ever guessed that it would have been different? It's not like someone grabbed something out of the hardware drawer and threw it in. It looks just like the other ones.
Factory bolts.
So honestly, I'm sure this is a Ford factory body fastener, probably for some other part of the car.
But not for that hood hinge.
Yeah, it got messed up and put in the wrong place at some point. So I'm gonna try to find, luckily there is a lot of support for these cars. I can probably find the correct one, like, in the aftermarket, like T-Bird's Nest or someone that does just Thunderbird parts. And then I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about the hood. I'll run a tap through it to try to make the fine thread bolts fit, and hopefully I can find one of these bolts, and then he'll have all 4 correct bolts and everything should be okay.
Because we love our rare classics, but it's nice to have a popular classic every now and then too.
Oh man,
when
it
you have
makes
this much work to do.
It makes parts so easy. It can make the parts a little bit more expensive, but very easy.
Well, that's great news. Disaster and crisis averted with a little forethought. And because, like so many times, you have the experience, you've been down this road before, expecting the unexpected, knowing where that weight's gonna shift.
Yeah, this ain't the first hood I took off of a car.
This ain't your first rodeo.
No.
But it definitely got my heart pumping there for a few minutes.
It scared the heck out of me too.
I know it did.
It really kind of stinks that this guy already did all the body work and he did it himself and he painted it himself, which really tells you he must love this car if he's going to do that much work. And now we have to kind of tiptoe around all the body work and paint to do what we have to do mechanically.
Well, great, Eric. Well, I'll let you get back to work on this 64 Thunderbird. See what other surprises she has in store for us.
Oh, don't say that. That did get my heart pounding for a moment. Just pointing something out that's kind of cool. That right there, that bolt right there, that is a drain for the torque converter. Something cool that you really don't see on cars newer than maybe the mid-60s. I don't remember when they stopped doing it, but it's so that you can drain the torque converter. You know, remember the automatic trans, if you're doing a service on it and you drop the pan, the torque converter is still gonna be full. Matter of fact, and the torque converter takes quite a few ports on almost any automatic, so you're missing out on a lot of fluid. And so that's why in a lot of these older cars, they actually did give you a drain. But once again, it's kind of a quirk of older cars. I don't think anyone, I've never seen that on a car newer than maybe 1967. And then, you know, I noticed that was disconnecting the torque converter from the flex plate, and I marked this stud. This is the first nut I'm taking off, but I'm gonna make some marks on the studs so that I know which studs go through where on the flex plate. A lot of times there is a bolt pattern to the torque converter, so it can only go on one way. So I'm gonna put a yellow mark for the yellow stud, I'm gonna turn it 90 degrees, put a black mark on the black stud, and then if I can find any other colors here, I'll mark the other ones too. But if I do just two, that'll be good enough that I can tell how it's gotta go back together. I'm not draining the trans fluid. This car is not in for that type of service, and with old cars, you know, sometimes you don't want to tempt fate. If I don't have to go there, I'm not going to. But it's a cool thing to point out.
So you got the inspection cover off, you got the exhaust lowered.
Yeah, I gotta turn the engine over and keep unbolting the bolts between the torque converter and the flex plate. After that, I've of course got the bolts that hold the trans to the engine. I'm running out of things to do down here. I'll, you know, of course take another look around to make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm getting close. I wouldn't say I'm getting close. I still have a lot to do, but...
Making progress.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think it'll be out today, but I might be done down here today.
Wow, Eric, it's out.
Yep.
That bird has laid an egg and it's about ready to hatch. I know you're going to be taking this engine apart here pretty soon.
Yeah, I was gonna put it on our engine stand, but it's such a big engine. I don't remember where that stand came from. I think I got it for free, and I don't have a lot of confidence in that stand. So we ordered another bigger, more stable stand. This engine here smokes a lot. So I'm gonna end up taking the cylinder heads off of this and replacing the valve seals. And you know, of course, while it's apart, refreshing a couple of other things on it too. We're gonna reseal the power steering pump. I was trying to take the alternator off of this. This bolt is corroded into this part of the alternator like I can't believe. So it's been soaking in Croil overnight. I'll soak it again and work it a little bit more. You know, that's gonna have to come apart now at this point just so we can put it back together. Once I get it apart, you know, I'll run a rat tail file through there and clean it up and it'll be all right. And I'll probably paint a few things for the customer too if he's keen on that while it's apart. I think he's gonna go for that. He really likes the car. The rest of the car is very clean. I painted the engine on my checker when I took it out, and I actually kind of wish I hadn't because, you know, the rest of my car, it's not nasty looking, but it's patinaed. So now you got a patinaed car with a nice engine, and on my car it doesn't look right. I wish I'd left it alone. But this is a nice car with a patinaed engine, so maybe he'll want us to paint it.
Well, isn't that? Let's get a look at this gaping maw. Now that that 390 Thunderbird 4-barrel is out of this car.
Kind of interesting to see what he's already replaced. You can tell that high pressure power steering hose has been replaced. I think the master cylinder's been replaced. So it's had a little bit of work on it recently. Well, I had the engine up, you know, maybe about here, and I noticed I forgot to undo the connections to the alternator. That wasn't easy because you got this rubber boot on the back side covering it, and I had a very difficult time seeing how to take it apart. I basically did it by looking at the service manual and looking at the illustrations in there, and I was like, okay, I think I get it, and I felt around for the nuts that were holding it on, and I got it apart. But while I was doing all that, you know, the engine's halfway out of the car, and it was tilted, and even though you try to drain the coolant out, you never get it all, and it always leaks the most when it's at that halfway point, and it was really annoying. So it ended up dumping like another gallon of coolant on the floor while it's kind of half in, half out, and I'm messing with the alternator trying to get the connections apart. I ordered the parts, they're on the way. Oh, it's gonna get core plugs too, expansion plugs. I don't know if you can see it, But this one over here is leaking. Yeah, I don't know if you can get down low enough to see it. It's on the other, I don't know, we'll take a picture of it or something when we get it on the stand. It's right underneath the motor mount. I don't know. If you come over here, you can see all the rust. So I ordered some brass expansion plugs to put in it. We'll replace all of them. And while they're out, I'll take my engine cleaning brushes and get in there and try to clean as much of the crud out of those cooling passages as I can. I'm a teensy bit worried about the radiator. The radiator's got a little bit more crud in it than I think he knew about. It's not horrible, but I think we probably should send it to be boiled out. I don't know if this is the original radiator. I don't think so. I think this is actually an aftermarket one that was replaced in period. We'll have to get a little JB weld or something on that. So I don't think this is the original Ford one. I think this is a radiator that someone else put in it probably 30 or 40 years ago, maybe more.
Well, blowing it out and going through it, we found, just as a matter of protocol, is always a really good preventative measure to take when we're dealing with cars this old.
Right, and now's the best time to do it. He very much he's owned this car for a couple of years and he's been embarrassed to drive it because it smokes so bad. So he very much is looking forward to enjoying this car this car show season. So I very much would like to get this car back to him as reliably as possible. It would be an awful shame if we, I did all the engine work on it and gave it back to him and now it's overheating because the radiator's full of schmoo.
That's one word for it. Yeah, you're going to continue forward with doing the disassembly, and we'll pick this up when that's ready and the engine is on the stand, and we'll go from there.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, now that you got that 390 V8 out of the Thunderbird, Eric, how are things looking?
Some unexpected stuff we found.
Yeah, I'd mentioned before, it sounded like it laid an egg, and now it sounds like that egg may be full of cracks.
Yeah, well, the car didn't run great when it got here. I could tell it wasn't running on all 8 cylinders, but it was burning so much oil, I didn't think much of it. I thought, well, spark plugs are probably just fouled. Who knows? I took the valve covers off, I took the rocker shafts off, and I started putting the push rods. I kind of sort them. I have these boxes I literally made. This is supposed to be the passenger side, rear, front, and I stick them in there as I go. And I was like, wait a minute, there's something funny here. It looked like a push rod was almost missing, and I looked down inside, and I found out it was there, but it looks like that. So, next step, of course, is to take the heads off.
I've heard people tell us to get bent, but holy cow.
Yeah, I don't think the owner knew about that, but I don't think he's driven this car very much. He did a lot of body work on this car. I don't know how much mechanical work he did. I know he did some stuff with the power steering. You can tell one of the hoses is new, the reservoir in the power steering pump was new, but I don't think he drove it very much. So I don't think he knew how sick the engine was. Now, I'm pretty sure I can get the push rods. I haven't checked yet. I actually did stick my fingers down in where the lifters are, and they all spin really nice, even the ones that were bent.
Yes, this engine I read has hydraulic lifters.
Yes, it does.
Which is that unusual for 1964?
I wouldn't call it unusual. There were cars that had it and cars that didn't.
Okay.
Of course, your nicer cars would have had it, and Thunderbird's a personal luxury car. I'm not surprised that this car's got it. But your cheaper cars may not have had it. But anyway, next step is to take the heads off, and I suspect it was this one anyway. That's actually an intake. But this is the one that had the bent push rod on this side, and then there was one on the other side too. I suspect when I take this head apart, I'm gonna find that this valve is kind of stuck. Maybe it happened because I know this car sat for a long time before he put it back on the road.
It may have sat for 40 years.
Okay.
Since 1977 is when it was parked.
So maybe, when whoever started up, whether it was the owner or a buddy of his or the guy he bought it from wanted to get it running before it sold so he could get more for it, who knows? Maybe they shot some, too much starting fluid down his throat or whatever, and it fired up real suddenly and puked the push rod out. I don't know. But, this car is in here for valve seals anyway. You saw it burning all that oil. It was idling outside. So I'm gonna take all these valves out, make sure that they move, nice and free. If they don't, we'll do whatever we gotta do. If I gotta send it to a shop and have new guides put in, that's what we'll do. I don't think it's gonna go that far, but we'll see. And I'll replace the seals and clean everything up and, you know, of course replace the gaskets. I'll look for cracked springs. I don't think we're gonna have any though. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I think he's gonna be surprised at how much nicer it runs and how much more power it has when he gets it back.
Oh, I believe that. And I'm so happy that we have the fresh engine stand for this 390 cubic inch Ford V8. I know that was
Should I tell them the epic saga of the engine stand?
You might as well, because we're dealing with not only issues with getting quality parts for cars of this era, we're also dealing with issues of just getting quality tools nowadays.
Yeah. We have this other stand over here, but I was gonna use it, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies. For an engine that big, I don't know. You know, I could see myself turning something over and it just isn't stable enough.
Well, you thought it was a bit wimpy.
Yes, exactly.
For a big block V8.
Right, so we upgraded to this one. I got this from a parts store that we have a very good relationship with. This is not their smallest stand, this is the next size up.
But I have read reviews about the quality of this stand when it was delivered.
Yeah, and they weren't terribly complimentary, were they?
No, they were not.
So first off, right out of the box, it didn't have these straps here. And the box was in terrible shape. It was torn to pieces. So I'm sure the straps fell out in shipping somewhere. Someone saw them on the ground, didn't know what they were, threw them away, and it came to me without the straps. Now my full-time job, I work at a place that's got a machine shop. And I already had this thing almost together when I realized the straps weren't there. I didn't want to take it apart, take it back to the store, you know, have them order another one, wait another day to get it, and all that stuff. I was just like, screw it, I'll go to work tonight and I'll just make straps. So that's what I did. So I put those on. In the meantime, how I always mount an engine to a stand is I take this part and I bolt it to the engine. So I had the engine out of the car and I had it just kind of laying on a tire.
We saw it on the cherry picker earlier, it's right here.
And I take this off of the engine stand and I bolt this to the engine, and then I pick the engine up with the cherry picker again, and then I put the engine on the stand. Well, I was trying to bolt this, not on this stand, but on that stand, to that engine, and the stupid fingers didn't have enough spread to them. They wouldn't go far enough away from each other to bolt to the engine, no matter how I did it. I tried it, you know, this way, I tried it this way, I tried it kind of cockeyed like that, and nothing worked.
And we even measured those fingers to make sure that they were the same size.
Yeah.
They were. The difference was in the range of the slides.
Yeah, the actual things they slide on.
And those.
So once again, I went to the machine shop and I had...
you can point to the slides.
Yeah, I'm not skilled enough to do this. I had to call in a favor to a friend of mine who's better with machining than I am, and he had to open these up so that they could actually grab the engine. And I just, you know, that drives me nuts. This is not a light duty engine stand. This is the heavy duty one. I think this is rated 1,000 pounds or whatever, I don't remember. If it's gonna take a big engine, it should bolt to a big engine.
It's a 1 ton, so it's rated for 2,000 pounds.
Okay, so I mean, this should be able to, you know, go on to a diesel for Pete's sake. How is it not fitting on an American V8?
And of course, because you modified it, we've immediately voided the warranty on it.
Well, yeah.
But what were we gonna do? Wait another 2 days to get another engine stand from the same store?
Exactly, and with the same problems and all that. So it's just, I know that a lot of you are probably watching this thinking, oh, I would just take it back. It's like you're saying, you end up with the same problem. So you make what you have work somehow.
And especially when you're in business, time is money.
Yep.
So we're trying to get this car out the door. We've got another engine rebuild in the works, on standby, ready to go on the lift, and we can't do that if we don't have an engine stand that's ready and willing to go.
Yeah, well, and just so you know, this is not getting a full rebuild. It's almost certainly just gonna get the top end.
On that note, I am so glad that we got a chance to catch up here and see what all is happening with this 390 big block out of this 1964 Ford Thunderbird.
By the way, do you want to show them the core plug that's rotted out here? I don't know how, I probably could have done all the head work with the engine in the car, but the car was leaking coolant on our floor, and that's why. And you can see it much better now. There was a motor mount here. You know, I put the bolts back in there just so I wouldn't lose them. But, you know, I'm gonna knock these core plugs out and put fresh ones in so that doesn't cause a problem for this guy. I don't think he knew about that either. You know, we didn't know about it until we had it idling in the shop and it was leaking coolant on the floor, so.
That's true. The owner was not aware this car had a coolant leak.
Yep.
Probably because it hasn't really had a chance to be run out yet.
Yep.
And finding those two bent push rods goes a long way in explaining why.
Well, it was smoking so bad he didn't want to drive it. I don't blame him. It was smoking terrible. I would have been embarrassed to drive this car totally.
And
Just
now
like
you've
he
got a
was.
much better idea as to why that was and just what attention this engine was crying out for.
Well, yeah, the push rods weren't making it smoke though. I'm
Right.
sure that was old valve seals. If there's anything left of the valve seals when I take this apart, they'll be like plastic. You know, they'll just crumble in your fingers.
Well, we'll pick it up as soon as you get to that stage.
Mm-hmm. All right, just real quick, this is one of my little tricks for getting sludge off, or at least starting to get sludge off of engines. We keep all our used transmission fluid here, and I actually put it in a little squirt bottle and just kind of spread it around on sludgy stuff. You know, there's a lot of detergents in transmission fluid, and we get used transmission fluid free here whenever we drain a trans. So that way I don't have to buy anything. I stick it in a little squirt bottle, I hose it on whatever I can. Of course, for smaller parts, if I can do it, you know, I'll put them in a container, and I'll fill the container with used trans fluid, and I'll just soak the parts in that. So that's my trick for trying to save money and degrease things.
Good tip, because I see that you have the heads off of this Ford Thunderbird 390 V8.
Yeah.
What did you find? I know you found two bent push rods. Mm-hmm. Was there any other signs of any significant wear or damage?
Just one little spot. This cylinder had one of the bent push rods. I don't know if it's even going to show up on camera, but right there you can see that the valve did hit the piston. Just barely kissed it. If this was my engine, I wouldn't worry about it. It looks like it hit it once and that was the end of it, and it was okay. So I mean, I wouldn't worry about that. When I took the heads off, I disassembled them and the valves moved nice in the guides. I took the heads to a machine shop only because I broke a couple of bolts on that hold the exhaust manifolds on, and they broke off flush. If they broke off a little bit sticking out, I could heat it and grab out some vice grips and work it back and forth and stuff. But since they broke off flush and I have nothing to grab onto, for the little bit of money at the machine shop charges to, you know, drill those out in the center and take them out and not damage any of the threads on the outside, you know, so I can put the same size and thread bolt back in and make it all perfect. It was worth it to me to take them to the shop and have them fix them that way. The machine shop I took them to, I've been dealing with for a long time, and I do trust them to get broken bolts out, but every time I've ever brought them a head and asked them to check and see if it was flat, they've always machined it flat and charged me for it. Does that mean that they all need it, or that they just do it and they don't even check? You know what I mean? Now, by far most of the heads I brought to that machine shop were aluminum, and aluminum heads are warped all the time. So there's a very good chance that all of the aluminum heads I brought to them actually did need it. But
This is a stout
Yes.
iron block V8.
this is cast iron block, cast iron heads. Let me check it myself. I don't want them grinding stuff off of it if it doesn't need it and then charging us for it. Sometimes that can bite you in the butt, you know? It might change the compression, and I don't want to do that, because then maybe you'll get spark knock that you didn't have before, or something like that, you know what I mean? So I'm just going to check it myself. I told them just to stick it in their hot tank and clean them up real good, because they can clean them better than I can, and to get the broken bolts out. Other than that, they're doing nothing.
But you're doing plenty else, because you're cleaning up this block and getting it ready. And
Yeah, he wanted it looking pretty too, so I'm
Yep,
gonna try to
we've
do
got
that.
some areas here in the engine compartment that the owner has requested that you tidy up a bit. And, of course, you'll be cleaning and painting the block and the valve covers.
Yeah, and the heads too are looks like. So yeah, that'll be cool. I mean, the rest of the car is so pretty. It'll be nice to pop the hood and see a pretty engine too.
Well, there's the cylinder heads for the Ford Thunderbird.
Fresh from the rebuilder. Although I didn't pay them to do too much except clean them and take out 3 broken bolts. The funny thing is, the one that I thought was gonna be hard, it looks like they got out with no issues. The two that I thought was gonna be easy, it looks like they had maybe a hard time with them. You know, you can tell by the way the metal looks there that they had to get it pretty hot.
And so now the valves are resealed?
Yeah, I did that myself. Once again, I didn't want to pay them to do things I can do. I checked the heads to make sure that they were straight. I mean, literally all you do is you put a straight edge across here, 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 and here, and try to get a 3/1000 feeler gauge under it, and if it doesn't go, then the head's flat. So I didn't want to pay them to do that. I did pay them to clean it, because they can do a better job of that than I can. And then I took them apart, I lapped all the valves, and replaced the valve seals, and put it all back together.
Well, they sure do look nice, Eric.
Yeah. And you know, this car, I didn't have any reason to believe that the heads were warped really anyway, so I wasn't all that worried about it, but of course I checked it anyway. Like I said, I didn't want to pay them to do things I can do.
Well, I take it we still got a little more cleaning to do on the block before the heads go back on.
Yep. Yeah, I gotta clean the deck surface. I gotta run a tap through all of the bolt holes. It's real critical that those are clean, so I get the proper torque when I torque the head bolts down. As you can see, I took the expansion plugs out. You can see that one was rotted through. That one was the one that was right here that was leaking. So I'm gonna put the heads on first, but then I'm gonna take some brushes and a hose and run through there and try to get all the crud out of the coolant passages. I thought we had some engine degreaser in stock. It doesn't look like we do. But after I get the heads on, I was gonna clean the block up a little bit more and try to get more goo off of there. And then I think we're gonna paint it black for the guy too.
Fantastic. Well, you're making storming progress on this 64 Ford Thunderbird.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna be working on this and get as far as I could with this and then work on that. Get as far as I could with this, then hop back on the Thunderbird while heads were at the shop or whatever, but things are moving. Oh, I shouldn't say that out loud. I'm gonna jinx it. I've been able to stay on the Thunderbird is what I'm saying. So, and I didn't quite expect that.
Well, we'll see if there's any more unexpected surprises.
Oh, don't say that out loud either. By the way, here's some of the seals that came out of the heads. And they are original. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick that up, but it says Ford right there. Either says Ford or Fomoco. Either way, they're original.
Well, they were definitely past their expiration date.
Yeah, honestly, they're not as hard as I expected them to be, but the ones that I put in are much softer, so.
Great. Any other plans for today?
If I get the engine all reassembled today, without the valve covers, of course, we will have done good today.
Yes, the owner messaged me again, said he'll be here this weekend with the gold paint.
Yeah, so what I'm planning on doing, if I make it as far as I'd like to get today, I want to get everything but the valve covers on it, and then paint the engine, and then we'll wait for him to bring the paint for the valve covers. Which, you know, if I have to put the valve covers on in the car, that's fine. There's absolutely no problem with that at all. So we can make a lot of progress while we're waiting for that paint.
Well, let's get to it.
All right, so this is what I didn't want to pay the machine shop for. This is a 3/1000 feeler stock, and I'm just putting the straight edge across there, and you try to get the 3/1000 under the straight edge, and if it doesn't go, you're good. And then you do it across like this. You do it across like this. Oh, hang on, I gotta... Do it across like this. Hang on, there we go. You do it across this way. I gotta be sure I'm holding it square. And you do it across this way. See how simple that is? That's why I didn't want to pay the machine shop to do it. I can do it. I don't remember what I paid for this, but obviously this is just a Harbor Freight straight edge. And then be careful with your straight edges. You know, you can see this has to be pretty much perfectly straight. Otherwise, it's going to mess up your measurement. And that's why you can see that this surface is machined. and this surface isn't. And even though this is a cheap Harbor Freight straight edge, it still comes with a little protector to make sure that you're getting a good measurement of it. So yeah, that's what I didn't want to pay the machine shop to do. And then I don't want to go down that road if I don't have to. I can check this easily enough myself. I don't want to pay for a machine job that it doesn't need. And if they do machine it, that is going to reduce the size of the combustion chambers a little teeny bit. That is going to boost the compression a little teeny bit. Would it be significant? Probably not. But then, let's say this car gets overheated again in the future, and then they need to take off more material. Well, now you've done it twice. How often can you do that before you can't do it anymore? It's just like surgery. You don't do it unless the patient's gonna die if you don't. You know what I mean?
That's a good point, and a good way to reduce cost and improve efficiency.
Yeah, make it so that if the car ever needs it again in the future, you can do it.
Reduce further complications.
So,
sounds good, Eric. We'll see what happens next with these cylinder heads for a 64 Thunderbird with a 390 V8.
This stuff out of here.
Now that's a handy looking tool.
Oh yeah, this is the quickest and easiest way to clean this up. So, by the way, if you're doing this at home, I'm using plastic bristles, and this is one of the, I wouldn't say this is the more aggressive one, but if you're cleaning something up this way, you don't want to use the green one on aluminum. I'm not sure there are any of these that you can use on aluminum. I don't remember for sure. But what you definitely don't want is something like this. This is like sandpaper, and there's grit in it, and it might take the crud off, but you don't want to leave any grit in the engine. That'd be like pouring sand in your engine. So do not use these for cleaning up gasket surfaces.
Are those bristles like a nylon?
I don't remember. It's plastic, so I don't know. And usually, if you don't push too hard, they last a long time. This is what it looks like new. You don't want to push really while you're doing this. Just kind of let the tool do the work, and do more than tickle it. But I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. It's not complicated.
Let's see how it does, before and after.
I might try to take those out.
Here's the before. Well, we saw how you got the mating service nice and clean there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to put the copper stuff on the gasket. Oh, I got it on backwards.
How can you tell?
Front.
Oh. Now you mentioned that you found a bit of debris or goop down there in the bolt holes.
Oh yeah, I ran a tap through all the bolt holes to make sure they're nice and clean. Because if there's oil or something in there, it will affect your torque. There was a lot of goo in there, so I did more than just run a tap through them. I put the blowgun in there and put a rag over there to catch the stuff as it came out so it wouldn't go, everywhere. Still managed to get a little bit in my eye anyway, but...
Although you do have some eye protection on your head today.
Oh, well, yeah. I got sunglasses on just because I was wearing my contacts today. I'm being persnickety again. Yes. This is the one. The heads are the same, right and left, but still, always put them back where they came from. Okay. I ran a tap through all these bolt holes yesterday. And I am reusing the original bolts, which I meant to put those in the ultrasonic cleaner just to make sure. So, with a modern car, you almost never reuse the original bolts because they're torqued to yield. So you literally, on a modern car, you torque the head bolts until you permanently stretch them. So you can't do that again, you'll just break them. The original head bolts in a car old enough to have cast iron heads, you almost always can reuse the head bolts. You just clean them up, check them with a straight edge, just put the threads up against the straight edge, and see if there's a spot where the threads are necked, where they're, like hourglass shaped. And if there is, then you got to replace that bolt. But I checked all of these. They were all fine. I cleaned them up. I'm going to clean them up a little bit more in our ultrasonic because I'm just that persnickety. I meant to do that a little while ago and I forgot. I meant to do that while I was doing all the other cleaning. Then I'll put them in.
And our apologies to the audience because this is going to get a little bit irritably noisy.
I don't know. I don't think the camera is going to do justice to the noise this makes. There's nothing quite like the irritating hum of an ultrasonic cleaner.
Okay. So we'll pick this up and that's all ready to go back together.
Yeah, I should have started that 20 minutes ago. I'm just running this thread cleaner through this engine block, and Ross and I were talking about the chemicals we use to clean things here. Thought maybe we'd do a quick video. I'm sure everyone watching is probably familiar with Simple Green. You can get it anywhere, auto parts stores or wherever, and we use this to clean the floors. And for a while, I was actually using this in our ultrasonic cleaner to clean carburetors and stuff that we rebuild. The problem with the regular Simple Green is if you leave something submerged in it too long, it discolors it. And so even though it gets it very clean, it looks tarnished or something when you get it out. So in our ultrasonic cleaner, we upgraded to this. This is the aircraft grade Simple Green. And it's not cheap, but man does it do a good job. This is the only thing I use in our ultrasonic now. I've never seen this at any store. I ordered this, I think, on Amazon. I was really impressed, just for instance, with these head bolts that are going back in this car. I cleaned these up in the ultrasonic, and I pulled them out of the ultrasonic, and 2 minutes later, they were like dry. Another thing I like about it is, it takes the ultrasonic cleaner about 20 minutes to do its job. And there are times when I want to dash out to, say, the machine shop and pick up some cylinder heads or something. I can just throw stuff in the ultrasonic, turn it on, walk away, come back hour and a half later, and stuff isn't going to be tarnished and discolored because it's been in there too long. I could leave it in there overnight if I wanted to.
So we went through the ingredients list of these two Simple Green concoctions, and they are very different. Mm-hmm. One of the things I noticed is that industrial or aircraft quality Simple Green doesn't have any color or fragrance. And it also does not contain hydrochloric acid.
And I think that's probably what's staining our stuff when we leave it in there. So, but yeah, this is good stuff. It's not cheap. I don't remember what I paid for this, but yeah, it's a little harder to get and it's significantly more expensive, but man, it does a nice job.
So now that you have all the neat and tidy head bolts, are they about ready to go back into this cylinder block?
Almost.
For our 64 Thunderbird.
Almost. I just got back from O'Reilly's. I got some copper gasket spray, so I thought we had enough in the shop to do both head gaskets. There's only enough to do the one, so I had to go out and get some spray, and I got to spray the other head gasket and then put that together. So we're getting there. I'm hoping to have the intake manifold back on this engine today and clean out the coolant passages and put the core plugs back in. If we make it that far today, I'll feel like we really made a lot of headway.
And normally we don't endorse products specifically, but we did want to talk about the significant improvements that you've discovered utilizing this unique blend of Simple Green when it comes to mechanical components. There's a reason it's for the aircraft industry.
Part of the reason why we do this channel is because we want you guys to fix your own cars. I don't need every car in the world coming here, and I don't need to be the one fixing it. There's an inexhaustible supply of old cars out there that need to be fixed. So if you want to do this yourself, there's no teacher-like experience, and it's been our experience that this works best. So if you are gonna clean stuff, If you're working on your own car at home and you want to know what we use, what the pros use, I guess, that's the stuff. And the ultrasonic cleaner, I think I got this from Amazon as well. Now, this wasn't cheap either. I think this cost me $600, and that was from Amazon, and that was before COVID. So I'm sure it's more now. I bet you this same cleaner costs $800 now.
But you can't argue with the results.
Yeah, and for certain things you just need an ultrasonic cleaner. I mean, there's nothing like them. I don't know. They changed the nozzle. I'm not used to seeing it go on like that. It's really hard for me to gauge how much I'm putting on. You know, this is the one I just finished. I wonder if I could have, any chance I could have done, nope, of course not. I hate this. With these old cans, if you dropped it and broke the nozzle, maybe you could get the broken piece out and take a nozzle from another can. These new ones, you break that and you have to buy a new one. I'm sure that's why they do that. Jerks.
Everything new does not always mean better.
No, absolutely not. That's another thing I was going to talk about when we were talking about the head bolts. I'm sure people are going to write in the comments, oh, head bolts are cheap, just buy new ones. Yeah, they're cheap. That's why I'm not buying new ones. I don't want to use some Chinese head bolt when these ones right here are perfectly fine, and they're probably made in the USA. Maybe it was 50 years ago, but if you ask me, what do I trust more? Something made in the USA 50 years ago or something made in China today? I'm going to go with the 50-year-old American stuff every time.
These bolts may be pushing 60, but they're enough to push this V8, to push this Thunderbird. How's it coming, Eric?
Making progress. I'd like to have the intake manifold and the valve train all put together today. If we get there, then I will be proud of the progress. And of course, we still got to clean up. I've got foamy engine degreaser sitting on it right now, just kind of chewing on that gooiness. Yeah, I guess we're doing a quick video on this stuff. So the service manual for this car says to put I think the exact words are oil-resistant sealant on the intake gaskets. And so this is what we recommend. In our experience, this is what works best for that. But I'm gonna put RTV on here, on the block surfaces. But for the intake manifold, where the intake meets the heads, I'm using this high-tech stuff.
And it's red in color.
Yep, yeah. It reminds me of an anaerobic sealant, but I don't think that's what this is. I can't read it because I got my stupid contact lenses in. But anyway, that's the stuff.
Eric, you had mentioned before when we had the intake manifold on here just for sizing things up and looking at the block, and that little hose right there was a little bit of a potential speed bump along the way.
Yeah, you can't, I don't think there's any way to put that hose on once the intake manifold is on. Now, the easiest way to do it, of course, would be to do it with the water pump. Put the intake manifold on and then put that hose on the water pump and put the water pump on. But as far as we know, this car doesn't need a water pump. Matter of fact, it looks like it was done not too long ago. Look how fresh that metal is. So I don't know if the owner of this car put that on or what. It wasn't leaking from the water pump. It wasn't making any horrible noises. But yeah, I did replace that hose. It's a fresh hose that I just went to the parts store and got. So yeah, this is gonna be a little bit tricky, scooping the manifold in and then setting it down. That's the way it's gotta be done.
And then here comes a little helping of that high-tack.
Mm-hmm. This stuff doesn't dry, you know, it doesn't get hard. You know, I could put this on here and walk away and come back tomorrow and this will be sticky.
So that's completely different from RTV.
Mm-hmm.
Because that vulcanizes, correct? That basically becomes a solid?
I don't think so. I don't think it vulcanizes. No, I mean, vulcanizing would be the wrong terminology for it. And I think, you know, this is one of those products that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. Just taking the heavy stuff off. Yeah, it's made a lot of progress. This is where I was hoping to be before the end of the day.
This Thunderbird V8's looking like a real engine again.
Yeah, it is. This car was burning oil when it came in, so I don't want to put plugs back in it that are all fouled up with oil.
Makes sense. Oh, sounds like the oven's done.
You know?
The ultrasonic, what you got in there now?
The bolts for the rocker shaft on the passenger side.
Oh, yes.
Kind of a funny thing, if you've never seen one of these Ford 390s before, the push rods go through the intake manifold. So you have to put the intake manifold on first, and then put the push rods and the rocker shafts on. There's one of our new push rods right there. If you remember, two of them were bent. There's the two bad ones that came out. The other new one is right here. The service manual says to put the push rods back in the same holes they came out of. So that's what I did. The only new ones are the ones replacing these. And I guess that's it.
Great job, Eric. Successful day.
Yeah, not bad.
We'll
Looks
pick
like
this-
an engine again. I hope by, you know, maybe this weekend it'll go back in. That'd be cool.
It sure would. Look forward to that. We'll pick this up with the 1964 Ford Thunderbird 390 V8. So what's the plan, Eric?
Well, this has been sitting with degreaser on it for a couple of days now, actually. I'm just gonna take it outside and try to hose the degreaser off, mostly the engine block. You know, the heads and everything have been off and been cleaned already. So I just wanna get the goo off down lower, because he actually does want us to paint this engine before we put it back in the car. So I'm just gonna take it outside and do that.
Well, that was a messy little adventure we just had.
Yeah, I'm soaked and it's cold, but we got the bulk of the goo off.
The Ides of March are almost upon us. And we're making good strides. You mentioned that, gosh, this engine may never have been out before, so that could be 60 years
Yeah.
worth of oil residue.
I'm sure this engine was never out of the car before. You know, I got the nasty, nasty goo off.
Now it's just the detail work before you can get to work priming and painting. And what else did you mention earlier that you had discovered about the quality of the exhaust manifold gaskets?
Oh, you want to embarrass me?
No, I don't want to embarrass you, but there is a better way to do things we found out, so that's why you're working on it now.
All right, well, yeah, these are the gaskets that came with the intake set. And, you know, I've never had great experiences with them, but I don't replace a lot of exhaust manifold gaskets. And I found out through someone else's YouTube channel that they've used these gaskets a lot on all kinds of different engines, and so they always fail within 10,000 miles. And I was a little suspicious. Once again, I don't throw anything out, and I drive Ross crazy. He wanted to throw all these gaskets out a couple days ago, and I said, no, not until the car's done. This is what came off. And I wasn't sure I could find exhaust manifold gaskets like that again. And I thought we might not have any choice than to put those on. And so I put those on, I torqued the bolts to spec, but something told me don't crimp those things in place because they got like washers with these little ears on them that you crush on there and it stops the bolt from loosening up. I actually really should probably replace those, but I think the new gaskets come with those. I don't know, we'll find out. And so I didn't crimp those down, and then after watching that video, I was like, well, then I just have to get the right stuff. So I did a little bit of hunting, and I found gaskets like this. At least this is what the picture looks like. We'll find out when they come. I had to order them online, they're on the way. And I also want you to know that I'm not charging the customer for this either. He shouldn't have to pay for my learning. So I bought these with my own money, and when they come, I'll take these off. I'll put this on, new version of this, and put it all back together, and then it's gonna look more factory and probably last longer. I'm sure you all have seen it before. There were two sets of these gaskets in there. One's shaped like this, and the other one's shaped like that, and that was closer to this, so that's what I put back in. But, they got like paper on one side and like foil on the other, and whenever I take something apart, if the new gaskets don't really look like the old one, it makes me very, very weary. And that's another reason why, Ross, I tell you, don't throw anything out until the job is finished. And then sometimes even then we keep things, because every once in a while, like the customer at the Cadillac, he told us, no, I don't need my old distributor back, you can keep it. And then like a week later, he said, you know what, that was original to the car, don't get rid of it. Well, I kept it just in case.
Day by day, we learn more and more.
I mean, I've been wrenching on cars unprofessionally since I was 16. Professionally, for 14 years now, I think. And yeah, I still learn something on every car.
And you're not afraid to learn from other vintage mechanics who have shows on the internet.
I'd rather learn from someone else's mistakes than my own.
Well, let's have a look and see at the progress that Eric has made here on the Thunderbird 390.
Yeah, took me, hate to admit, all day just to assemble it back up to this point, and the heads were on it, this morning. I painted the valve covers with the correct paint that the customer gave us, put everything on the front of it, power steering pump, the alternator. I pulled the engine with those parts on it, so I wanted to put them back on before I put it in the car, just because it's easier. I'm not gonna have to lean over the car and all that. I think it's gonna be easier to assemble it that way. I've had bolts and random things in the parts cleaner, ultrasonic cleaner I should say, on and off all day. Oh, and I finally replaced the exhaust manifold gaskets. That's probably the thing I'm happiest with. So the exhaust manifold gaskets that came with the car, or with the headset, are in the garbage now, right where they belong. And the gaskets that are on here much more closely match what came off this car. So as you can see, see how the gaskets kind of wrap around the top of the exhaust manifold now? That's what I took off.
It looks like a heat shield.
Yeah, I don't know if it has some heat shielding so that it doesn't damage the ignition wires. Maybe that's what they're there for. See, so you can see what I put on is closer to what I took off now.
Because the other set that you got rid of did not have that 90-degree lip to it.
Nope. And they really weren't metal at all like that. They were just kind of, they were like that foil paper stuff. I'm sure if any of you have ever done exhaust manifold gaskets on a car, you probably know what I'm talking about.
And now I see these beautifully, freshly painted valve covers are going right back on. Mm-hmm. How much more do you think you have before the engine goes back inside?
Oh, it can't be a lot, but I didn't think it was a lot a while ago. There is a vacuum hose, like a PCV hose I gotta put on here. This is coolant. That's just gonna get bypassed right back to there. That's how it was when I took it apart, and the customer said, don't hook it up. So this car obviously has a problem with the heater core that he's gonna worry about later. And I mean, if you're driving a car in the summer, nice car in the warm weather, I'm sure a heater core is rather low on your list of priorities anyway. I got a bad heater core in one of my cars that I drive around in the summer, and it hasn't even shown up yet on my radar of, oh yeah, I gotta fix that.
The owner did come and visit us earlier this week while Eric wasn't here, but I got a chance to talk to him, show him the progress Eric was making here on the V8 and inside the engine compartment, and we agreed, not only are we gonna leave that alone for now, but we're gonna discuss later transitioning this engine to Evans waterless coolant.
Yeah, and this should be an easy transition. I replaced the core plugs, or freeze plugs if you want to call them that. That's not exactly what they are, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, when he's ready, changing this over to Evans, the car should be, you know, in good shape for it.
And I was very glad I was able to show our customer the footage that we shot, flushing out the core plug areas. And he was very happy to see that. He said, "Oh, was it very bad?" And I said, "Well, not really, considering its age.
Wasn't.
We've seen a lot worse."
Yes, we have. I just realized I got a little bit of RTV on that, so I got to assemble this before the RTV sets up.
And as pretty as this engine looks, Eric, kind of like my Dodge Coronet V8, you had mentioned the best solution is always to completely disassemble and hot tank these engines.
Well,
but of course, that requires extra time and a bigger budget.
Well, right, and you know, the customer did ask, can we paint this engine while it's out? And we said, sure. So we charged them 2 hours labor to do all that. Well, I spent about 5 hours cleaning this engine, and it's still gooey in places. So there comes a point where you just have to
grin and bear it.
Yeah, okay, that's the best I can do now.
And fortunately, I'm very happy with the results. Hopefully the audience is too, because I can show some footage of when this car rolled in and what the engine looked like before. And even though the customer didn't ask us for a Concours restoration on the engine compartment, he was most concerned, again, about solving the excessive smoke, getting the valve seals redone. And while the engine was apart, said, "Oh, would you mind doing a little do-it-yourself magic in a spray can?" So he stopped by and dropped off the paint supplies that he wanted to use on this engine, that he was going to use himself, actually. But decided it would be easier, since we were already overhauling the engine, to pay us for a couple hours more time and material to just go ahead and get it done. And I think, Eric, everyone will agree, this is a pretty handsome looking motor you've got here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little teensy bit embarrassed still, because I know there's still goo in nooks and crannies, and I had to paint over the goo. But once you put fresh gaskets on it, and pretty valve covers, and a pretty power steering pump, and cover it up with some other things, it actually cleans up pretty good. It looks nice.
It really does. Well, I'm really looking forward to picking this up when this 390 cubic inch V8 is ready to go back into our 64 Ford Thunderbird. If you enjoy automotive content like we do, consider subscribing to our channel or check out our website to join our VIP-only high-speed chase club for early videos and other great perks.